Hello and welcome to Global Sanctuary for Elephants podcast, Global Rumblings. Global Sanctuary for Elephants, or GSE for short, is a non-profit organization with a mission to create vast safe spaces for captive elephants where they are able to heal physically and emotionally, often from very traumatic pasts. I'm your host, Nadia Mari, and I'll be taking you to the lush jungle of the Mato Grosso region in central Brazil, home of GSE's initial project, Elephant Sanctuary Brazil. Currently home to 6 female Asian elephants, lovingly referred to as the girls. Hello and welcome to the next episode of Global Rumblings. Thanks for joining us this week. Very exciting episode because we are going to be meeting Guida and Maya, the first elephants to be welcomed to Elephant Sanctuary Brazil. Let's head on over to Brazil. Hello, Kat. Hi, Scott. How are you?
Still crazy and still good. How are you?
I'm fine. Life is good. Early sunrises and the sun sets late. So full days. That's great.
Nice. It's nice that you're finally getting warmed up.
Okay. We're picking up from last episode and we are going to learn all about Guida and Maya, your first elephants at the sanctuary, 2 former circus elephants, confiscated, and who spent a few years, if I read up correctly, at a farm, tied up, waiting for you two. So take us there. Who are the 2 wonderful elephants that you first welcomed?
Maya and Guida, 2 absolutely amazing and incredibly resilient elephants who, like most circus elephants, endured way more than they should have. Their life is typical captive elephants, stolen from the wild at infancy, sent to captivity, sent to a life of entertainment. And unfortunately, fortunately, they were removed from the circus because of advancing state legislation to ban performing animals or restrict performing animals traveling on circuses. And when they were removed, they went to a zoo temporarily because they were actually confiscated.
That was a very short time.
A quick judicial process. We actually sent some video there and they actually seemed quite lovely. They were playing in the pond. But
I'm sure it was the first time they had access to any large body of water, so they were thrilled.
They seemed like they were having a good time there, especially compared to their former life. And then the zoo said they can't stay here. And with that, they were actually put back into the custody. They were in I shouldn't say they were in the custody of the state, but in the guardianship of the lawyer for the circus as they were residing on his personal private farm.
Yeah, so it was weird. I know it's hard for people from a lot of places to picture somebody just having elephants in their backyard, but it is essentially what it was. He had a big farm, but he had just a big square. I don't know how big would you say that was?
Less than an acre.
Oh, definitely less than an acre. It was just hot wired off, split down the middle with hot wire because Maya used to push on Guida and knock her over. And they were both chained on a chain that was long enough to maybe take 4 steps in all directions. And that was it. That was unfortunately where they were moved to.
So in 2015, around the time that we had bought the property or signed the contract on the property, we had gone there to visit. As we knew we were actually having something move forward after all those months of exploration and property search and all the issues that came up with that. We knew we were going to be moving forward. So we went there to see the elephants and to try to develop a relationship and talk to the prosecutor. And they were pushing us to move forward as fast as possible because they wanted to send them to an aquarium. And so I went there first, I think, for the first visit, and it was really surreal. You are driving down a highway, leaving the city, And then you make a right-hand turn, go through a little bit of turns and winds, not very far, a couple kilometers, and you come up over the hill and there's 2 elephants chained there in a little pasture. It was really bizarre.
Yeah, it's, again, one of those moments where you're like, how is anyone allowed to do this? Yeah. But apparently it's all fine.
And that was my first encounter with the circus world in Brazil, dealing with the lawyer for the circus. And we know a little bit about some of the culture of circus from the United States and what we dealt with in Chile with removal of rumble from the circus. But everywhere's a little bit different, but there's definitely a common thread. A lot of stories need to be told and expressing how much control you have over the scenario or he has over the scenario. So it was interesting. And I remember being there and him telling our two colleagues who were with me at the time how he has no problem asking for the hit on somebody's life if they wrong him. So it was a little intimidating. Sometimes I was happy that I didn't know much Portuguese at the time because I could pick the pieces that I wanted to listen to and pretend the others didn't exist.
Filter it.
Yeah. But it's interesting seeing them that first visit and seeing how you can see their personalities right away as much as we could while they're on chains. Maya was a huge, big presence, undeniable presence. And Guida was definitely more withdrawn.
Yeah, when we had to go sign the contracts is when I went back that time. And it was a longer visit. We were able to spend the day at the farm with them and watch them. And it was to try to assess not just their physical health, but their mental health as well. Physically, Maya looks fine. You know, she's a tank of an elephant. She looks okay that way. Of course, they're standing in this black muck that
it was disgusting.
Is where they go to the bathroom and probably doesn't ever actually get changed in any or cleaned in any meaningful way.
For them to get to their little water trough that was embedded in the ground there, they had to put their feet in this black cesspool muck.
Yeah. Mm. And then Guida was the one who physically, when you looked at her, she was kind of a mess. She was probably between 1,000 and 1,500 pounds underweight. She was stereotyping the entire time. She did not stop once. We touched on her briefly before because she is, for me at least, she's the elephant that has stereotyped more than any other elephant that I've ever seen. When people engaged with her, when she ate, no matter what was going on, she continued to stereotype. And then she had this weird stance where we weren't sure if she had GI issues or if it was pain issues from somewhere else because she was standing with like her front feet, almost touching her back feet. And
I forgot about that.
Yeah. And she chewed weirdly. I mean, she just had physically all of these things going on that also the stereotyping, of course, touched and linked to the emotional status of her because she was just, I mean, she wasn't remotely present. You know, she was definitely one of those elephants who had withdrawn so deeply within herself to just kind of get through each day and be quote unquote okay, I guess. You know, it's just a way of coping and making it through things. But Maya,
how old were they?
Oh, sorry. Maya's
mid-40s.
50 now.
Yeah, at that point, mid-40s.
45, 47.
And they'd been in the circus all that time. How old were they when they'd been brought to Brazil?
Infants, 2 to 3 years old.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And they had been together and at that circus, from what we know, the entire time.
Terrible.
And then Maya, who physically looked okay, you know, when you got closer to her, you could see that her emotional state was definitely, she was very defensive. She was ready to lash out. You know, she was looking for somebody to do something bad to her so she could respond quickly. I mean, she was very tense muscle, big eyes. And she definitely got better while I was there and just, I mean, with a lot of sitting back and being quiet and just watching and every once in a while speaking gently, and she relaxed into things. But in the circus, she was the bad girl, and Guida was the good girl. So they were affectionate towards Guida. They would speak softly to her. They would, you know, pet on her. And then Maya everybody was afraid to approach. You know, on circus, when she was bad, she was the one who would get the beatings. And I say bad, not anything we would consider bad. These are all labels they get, you know, from where they came, not how we see them. And of course, that created a negative relationship between the two of them.
Does sound like a very weird setup. So that they've been confiscated, but as I understand correctly, but they weren't able to stay at the zoo where they were temporarily housed. So they're now back at the circus owner's property, and he's looking after them, inverted commas, and has got them tied up there. So that's weird. They've been confiscated from him, but he's still got them in his backyard. That's
that's a whole.
Well, it was the lawyer, not
Sure.
the circus owner.
Oh, the lawyer. Okay.
But that was the same exact thing that happened with Ramba. I mean, she was confiscated, but there was
Years
nowhere to
before.
send her. So she actually stayed on the circus property.
Oh, okay. That was Remember.
Yeah. So that's the problem with not having a solution.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have zoos available with space. You don't have anybody that can take them. So, and that was the original thought process behind developing Elephant Sanctuary Brazil way back in 2012 when they first contacted us about it. Is they knew this legislation was moving forward, but without a solution. You know, that's what Petter and Joyce from Elephant Voices has said. Without a solution, it could be worse. And that's what happened with a lot of these elephants. You know, it was worse for them in many ways. You know, they didn't get to go anywhere. They didn't see anything different. They were stuck in a cesspool. You know, if they were still traveling on the circus, which is not appropriate and not something we support at all, at least they're not going to be in the same cesspool water for months on end. You know, they're starting to see different areas. There's some sort of psychological and really some sort of physical stimulation that they didn't have where they were. So it was interesting for me as cats, you know, telling those stories. I remember seeing them there, but I see them as they were here. I see Guida's face as I see her here. I see that smile. I see that spirit. But when we saw her, that's not what she looked like. You saw just a shell of an elephant. We couldn't even tell who she was or what she was like. But thinking back of seeing them there, I remember the physical state. I remember the posture, as you're saying. I remember being worried. I remember her the swaying. But I see her physical presence within the spirit of the sanctuary with how she was here, and this Maya being as radiant as she is now. But she wasn't. No. You know, she was very closed off. She was really hard. She was in her own little bubble in her own way. Maya's, and when it comes to the recovery, well, you could talk about after they get here, but because I like to jump forward and backwards. To jump forward, Maya, that protective shell was this big giant personality hiding a very, very insecure being on the inside. And Guida was actually, hiding a very strong spirit on the inside.
Yeah, she was one of the best surprises when she got here. Yeah, for sure.
Stay tuned for later in the episode.
From other rescues, your supporters know that the transport crates are usually brought to the premises where the elephants are for a couple of days or even weeks before for the elephants to get trained for the crate transport. In our last episode, the crates were picked up with the paint not quite drying on their way to pick up Guida and Maya. So as a circus elephant, is that correct in me assuming that when the transport crates arrived, there wasn't a lot of training needed? I mean, were they quite, in inverted commas, happy to get on the crates, or was there a lot of training required? Because obviously you didn't know them that well. Well, there was trust. Obviously they needed to trust you to get on the crate, or was it for them just, I'm a circus elephant, get on it and that's it?
Well, it's very nuanced, Nadia.
We know you like to ask questions and hope that you get an answer that doesn't go in 1,000 different directions, but that is not one of those questions.
No, not at all. There's many different elements to it. First off is, if you're talking in very generic terms, most elephants are very understimulated. So you bring and they're inquisitive species. That's their nature. So you bring a transport crate, whether you're in a zoo or whether you're in a circus, they're like, okay, cool. What's this all about?
I mean, think of it as it's the first new toy they've had in 40 years, so it is that oh my God, somebody brought me something new. What is it? I'm going to touch it, smell it, go inside of it, what have you. So.
And then there's the element going back to the trust. It's not necessarily about building trust right away, but they see how different we are in how you look at them, how you talk to them, how you respect their space. They see us responding to very subtle communications that they're doing. And you can see a level of intrigue with them when you do that, when he's like, wait a minute.
And they pick up on it right away.
They take a step back a little bit. It's like, whoa, that's different, but they see the reason for it. They know the reason because they know what's going through their head. And when they see us responding positively or, taking that step back when we're unsure and not invading their space and being more protective of them, they get a sense of that. And it is their first taste of what sanctuary is like, or what sanctuary spirit is. And you see them respond. Do they trust us at that point? Not even close. Again, is there an intrigue? Are they curious? And we're talking about a highly sensitive species, highly inquisitive, highly emotional, highly intelligent. They are highly analytical. They're just being who they are, and they're assessing all these things, all the little nuances, all the details, all the different ways that we move, and the different interactions, and the different voice, and the different mode of talking.
I think for them, it definitely has a very different vibe to it. And there is that curiosity of, you're the first person in 30 years that seems to actually be listening to what I'm trying to communicate. Or you're the first person in 30 years that seems to understand what I'm trying to communicate. And there is that, it seems at least like there is that, I would like more of that. You're interesting. Let's see where this goes. Versus pure trust. For these elephants, and people say lots of things, but the reality is, for these elephants, trust takes a long time to actually earn. And for some elephants, you're talking decades. It just depends on who they are and what they've been through.
Yes, that's interesting, because in the other episode that we talked about elephant communication, you did talk about vibes and energy. So just you sitting back and just observing them and just being present, that is then new for them, as you say. And then I presume it then allows them to bring out a little bit more of their personality.
The reality is, for most people, they exist for them. It isn't anything about them. Even people that love elephants but don't really realize they make it about them. So they're generally approached by people in a way of, what can you give me? What can you do for me? Can I ride you? Can I take a selfie? Can I pet you? Can I do whatever it is I want?
Can I give you food that I want to give you?
Yeah. And it's not about the elephant at the core of it. So when there is somebody who approaches them and it is actually about the elephant, it's very different for them, and they know it right away. Like he said, it is that first taste of what sanctuary is supposed to be.
And their response is subtle. It's not like you see a dramatic shift. It's not like you see, the whole audience or everyone there saying how different the elephants are to us. It's not like that. It's very subtle. You just see them look at you different. You see them analyze it differently. You see them respond differently, but it's a subtle response. And, when we didn't do anything live at that point. No. Did they do live videos at that point?
Wow, you're going to make us sound even older than it already feels, but keep going.
When we started Sanctuary in Tennessee, email didn't exist. Everything
wow, you just really aged yourself.
Yes, I'm 50 years old. So we didn't do live videos, but we've had in past relocations, when people are watching the live videos, people will respond and comment in live videos saying, "Oh, they trust you, they love you, know you're there." No, they don't. They don't love us. They don't trust us.
Oh, they definitely. I always thought it was so funny when everybody said with Lady, "Oh, she loves you." I'm like, "Oh no, she does not love him." She doesn't love anyone, but okay.
And it's an unfair expectation. Again, going back to their complexity of trauma. Somebody has been traumatized that all their life. They don't have one person walked into their life and all of a sudden they feel safe. It may be the beginning of feeling safe, but that undermines all that they've been through to think that they can feel love in the way people are projecting so quickly. They need time.
And I know it's just that it's kind of romanticizing the whole process, which I get. Their lives have been terrible, and people know the difference that sanctuary makes and how wonderful it can be. And I think, again, it is that, people would like to believe, and sometimes it's because this is how other facilities portray it, that, they step off of the transport trailer and everything's fixed. All of the trauma of 50 years with humans, with other elephants, that it all goes away magically when they step onto sanctuary grounds. And that's not true. I mean, don't get me wrong. If we didn't think that sanctuary was amazing, we wouldn't have picked up our lives from the US and come to here and gone through everything we did if we didn't think it was absolutely transformative and the only life that is appropriate for an elephant. But it takes time, it takes work. It takes a lot of work on their part. They have to be willing to go through a process that isn't easy for them in general. But
that said, their adaptation to the crates was kind of fun. It was entertaining. So the scenario was we arrived at the crates, put them in place. And I don't recall if we arrived in the afternoon or the morning. I think it was that afternoon, the first afternoon, we gave Maya access. And I think it was the next day that we gave Guida access because of how long it took to get some of those pieces in place. But I don't remember exactly
I wasn't
sequence.
there. Don't ask me.
But when they had to stay on their chains, they had to stay on chains because there's no physical structure to contain them, just electric fencing.
I understand.
And we know that Maya does not respect the electric fence, and it wasn't constructed properly. And they said that what will happen is Maya is going to walk underneath the electric fence. So we set up the container at the edge of the electric fence, but to give her enough chain, she had to go into the crate. She actually was able to go underneath the fence as well. The fence wasn't constructed properly or very well. So after we reorganized all the electric fence the best way we could, we distracted Maya. We extended her chain just long enough for her to go just barely into the crate. She went and looked at the crate for a second and then immediately went underneath the electric fence to Guida. And she has a history of being aggressive to Guida. And Guida was intimidating and walked to the end of her chain, which Maya could still have access to her a little bit. And she was a little bit of a, I'm going to say bully. She wasn't being very gentle. She didn't hurt her. She didn't do anything too rough, but she wasn't being very kind or respectful of Guida's space. And then she walked back underneath the hot wire. And to do this, the wire is like hitting her back the whole way. She's rubbing it on her back and you can hear the little pops, pop, 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 pop at the touching. She didn't care. It wasn't very strong. Then she decided and she's Maya. And she's Maya and she's old Maya. She was Maya before Sanctuary. She had a big, strong presence of unhappy elephant. Yeah. So she went underneath the hot wire next to the trailer. And when she went underneath the hot wire next to the trailer, then she has access to a post that is providing the electricity to the neighbor house. So she wanted to play with that. And though we said, okay, let's shorten her chain back up. And we did that. And then we refixed all the hot wire. And I said, this is not grounded properly. It's not set up well. It's shorting out in various places. In order for us to do this and Maya to respect the electric fence, we're going to have to redo the electric fence. So we went ahead and spent the afternoon doing that. The next day, we gave Maya access again, lengthened her chain, and she was exploring the back of the trailer a little bit, pushing on the trailer, trying to see what she could break.
We would find out that this is genuinely who Maya is still to this day.
But she stopped messing with the electric fence. She started to explore the crate a little bit more and put her nose in the crate. And we had a bunch of food inside the crate, a bunch of treats for her in there. And she was exploring a little bit. So while she was exploring, we decided to go over and extend Guida's chain. And the whole time we were with Maya the day before, and even the second day, Guida was still swaying, bobbing her head, bobbing her head, bobbing her head, bobbing her head the whole time. So even while we were extending her chain, she was still bobbing her head. As soon as we said, okay, Guida, you have an extra 10 meters of chain, go where you want to go. She walked directly to the back of the trailer and then started grazing on the grass that she hasn't been able to touch for who knows how long. So she was grazing and grazing and grazing, and it was so peaceful. It was so beautiful. And it was just a very pleasant time to see. And she probably did that for about an hour. And then she walked back to the back of the crate and walked straight into the crate. and just went in there. And she stayed there all afternoon, calm as could be, eating her hay, eating her fruits, eating her vegetables, completely relaxed, never swaying. And you could see, and that was the shocker for us, because when we talked, as we talked in the earlier episode or earlier in this episode, we weren't sure how lost she was in that within herself.
Because some elephants go so deep and it takes them a long time to find their way out. They've just become so disconnected from the world around them. And it's, you know, to protect themselves, but it is really hard to kind of get them to reconnect with the world around them. And we were coming up with different plans that we could try and all this, I'm going to call it nonsense now, because clearly Guida thought it was nonsense, to try to get her to re-engage with things. And we didn't need any of it.
Yeah, it was remarkable to see. And, you know, when by the end of the first day, both elephants had been in the crate for several hours, we would have been perfectly comfortable closing the crates and heading on the way. They were so relaxed, so absolutely remarkably relaxed. And it was beautiful to see. And the other beautiful element of the day, whoever's doing shots for the
word beautiful,
the word beautiful, you're going to get drunk really soon. It was just remarkable to see, because as they walked out of the crate at the end of the day and we had to shorten their chains again for the night, they just seemed to look at each other differently. And it may be us living in a dream world or in ourselves, but I think that we observe elephants pretty well without putting too much on them. But it was just gorgeous to see how they seemed at that end of that first day. Guida went right back to swaying again, but she had a different look in her face. But this is a coping mechanism. It doesn't mean she's still stressed. This is a coping mechanism because of the years of abuse. And
habitual. You know, it is, she was in a new little square for a little while. You took her out of her square and she entered right back into the life she's known for the past 6 years and went right back to what she does in that life, which is stereotyping.
And one of the other amazing and beautiful things, we'll give you 2 shots now, amazing and beautiful things that evening, that night, because we were staying there at the farm with them, was watching or listening to them at night. And after everybody left, you know, we've talked about the importance of nighttime. I don't know if we have actually. Have we talked about the importance of nighttime exploration?
I don't think so on here.
We're going to have to dig into that, because it's really remarkable. But it was in the dead of night, 2:00 in the morning, and they're just rumbling back and forth, and they're starting to make their little squeaky noise. Maya's is talking a little bit, Guida's rumbling, and it was just absolutely lovely to see. Aww. So even in this hellhole environment, even stuck on chains, in this black cesspool pit, you know, they still had those moments to connect to each other. Even though Maya was not always kind to her, they still had moments to connect to the world around them when everybody else is gone, in the dead of night, when everything is just more, it's more beautiful.
Peaceful.
Beautiful.
More peaceful. Peaceful. We won't make you drink again. So the next day, we actually we did the same process. Let's go ahead and extend Guida's chain. Let's extend Maya's chain. And they basically spent the whole day in the crates. Maya would come and go. Guida spent a lot of time in. She would come out a little bit and go back in again. But they, from that point on, again, we could have left at any moment.
So when did you then leave?
It was scheduled, I think, for the 3rd or 4th day. I don't remember how long it was. But this is typical for elephant adaptations. I mean, they acclimated to them really quickly. There's nothing you can do to prepare them for the movement of the road, especially for those that have not been on circus. But for adaptation in the crates, really quick most of the time.
And how far were they?
The thing about crate adaptation is it's not, you know, we always have a roundabout schedule. You know, we make reservations with trucking companies and crane companies because the crates have to be lifted and that sort of thing. But we don't keep to that schedule if the elephant isn't good with that schedule. I mean, Bambi wasn't ready when it was technically scheduled for the truck to leave. So the truck didn't leave and people stayed longer. And we were actually starting to talk and have conversations about everybody leaving and Trish staying behind and working with her for the next few weeks or whatever it was going to take. Buenos Aires wanted the crate 30 days beforehand just because of their comfort, but also how sheltered Mara's life had been. You know, with Pocha and Guishimina, talk about sheltered lives. I mean, Guida Maia has the most sheltered life of all of the elephants we've dealt with. And they had the crates for almost a year. So while, you go in with these plans, we don't have anything that is set in stone, I will say, except for plane rides, because those are expensive. And if you cancel them last minute, they still charge you $750,000 for your plane ride. But aside from those, you have a lot of flexibility, or at least we do, when it comes to allowing an elephant whatever time it is that they truly need to be comfortable enough to spend a few days in the crates and be on the road.
You asked about how far it is. I don't remember the exact distance. It was, I think, a 2.5 day trip. Okay. I'm going to say, I don't remember, Nadia. I don't remember the distance on the trip. We can look it up and put it in the show notes for anybody curious. But it's about a 2.5 day trip on the way back.
Okay, so not that long. Like I think Guida Maia was more, wasn't it? Not like 5 days or something. So
no, these 2.5 day trips are easy now compared to the trips from South America.
And as a side note, for those who have never been along on one of our rescues, because we do a lot of live feeds from the road. The elephants do not get to leave their crates during the time that they are transported. This is not Asia. You do not have elephants, wild elephants, work elephants that are normally found on the road. So if we were to stop and let an elephant out of their crate, one, there's a good chance they wouldn't go back in because we are not free contact dominance. There isn't a mahout that can stand off of their ear and kind of drag them back into the crate. And two, if they did decide to leave, it would be a big deal. It would not be like in Asia, where if somebody saw an elephant on the side of the road, they wouldn't think anything of it. If somebody saw an elephant on the side of the road in Brazil, it would be a big problem.
We set up emergency stop locations. If something is to go wrong halfway through the trip or a third of the way through the trip, we have stop locations where we could pull into and have quiet spaces, or, if necessary, if something super drastic happens, set up a temporary fencing system where they could come out of the crate. But that is only if something is catastrophic going on where they're not going to do well on the trip. I've never heard of that happening. It's incredibly rare. Most of the time, the elephants do remarkably well.
And the times that they haven't in the United States is generally linked to the use of sedation, which we also don't do. Elephants tend to do best when they know what's going on around them and they can be aware of the situation. One of the problems with sedating an elephant for transport is they come out of sedation at some point. You can't, well, it's not healthy. You technically can, but if they come out of sedation in a transport container, there's generally a fair bit of discomfort involved in that situation and some panic. And you're not going to want to, just like you wouldn't want to keep your dog anesthetized for 24 hours, 48 hours, or a human being. It's the same thing for elephants. You don't want to keep them tranquilized for an entire trip. So we transport awake. We do bring drugs with us. We have emergency kits on the road, and they do include everything from IV fluids and meds for colic to sedatives, light sedatives, heavier sedatives, just in case something is needed. But we've never had to use any of that.
Very mild, with essential oils, flower essences, herbal remedies, things of that nature as well. Sure. The whole gamut to be ready for whatever may happen. But normally, again, they do incredibly well.
Yeah. Fascinating. But unfortunately, we are running out of time. And so this episode, we are obviously going to end on a cliffhanger, and we're going to have to wait until the next episode to then welcome Guida and Maya and learn about their first steps and breath of fresh air and free air at the sanctuary. So I'll let you go, even though it's not going to rain, but there's wind coming up on your beautiful day. You've got lots to do. Thanks very much for your time again. And until next time, take care.
Thank you again, Nadia. It's always a pleasure. And we look forward to
actually getting to when Maya and Guida got to the sanctuary. Apparently, we had a lot to talk about.
Again, it's so detailed. There's also involved. So it's you can't leave out all the little pieces.
Okay. Then catch up in 2 weeks' time. Bye.
Thank you, Nadia.
Bye, Nadia.
Take care.
Thank you for joining in this week's episode. We're going to have to meet up again in 2 weeks' time to learn more about Guida and Maya and their first steps at the sanctuary in Brazil. Very exciting. And until then, take care. And don't forget to subscribe to make sure that you listen to us in 2 weeks' time again. Bye.